Hey guys, welcome to BTech. Basil here, comparing the Lumia 650 from Microsoft with the Moto G from Motorola. These two budget devices are great, but they're not perfect. How do they stack up against one another? I'm going to talk about them in a lot more detail, but before I do, check out subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed. It helps us out like crazy. Right, onto these two phones. As far as prices go, you can pick up the Microsoft Lumia 650 for around 160 bucks, sorry, 199 bucks, 160 pounds sterling. It's a really good looking phone. Actually, probably the best looking you can get for the price. It's got a metal frame, glass front, soft touch plastic back, feels very good. The Moto G is available in two variants, one with 16 gig of internal memory and 2 gig of RAM, the other with 8 gig of internal memory and 1 gig of RAM. I would definitely recommend avoiding the 8 gig of memory and 1 gig of RAM version because you'll fill it up in no time flat. So this comparison, for the sake of ease, is always going to be with the 16 gig version, which comes in at around the same price, a little bit more expensive than the Microsoft Lumia 650, but not by much. They've got the same size screens, 5 inches, but they have different screen technologies. You've got an OLED screen on the Lumia 650 and the colors are vibrant. It looks really deep. It's got a polarizing filter on top that makes it just, well, look a little bit better generally. It's also 550 nits, so it's very nice and bright. The IPS panel on the Moto G isn't bad by any means, but it just doesn't wow me quite as much as the Lumia 650. So that's the screens. They're both glass, both feel really rich to the touch. They're both really enjoyable to interact with, and the 5-inch size is great across both. The flat sides of the Lumia 650 make it nice and easy to grip, whereas a rounded backing makes the Moto G quite ergonomic. The Moto G does not feel as premium though. It has got a few features above the Lumia 650 though, such as waterproofing, or water resistance. It's an IPX7, I think it is, water resistant phone, so it can be submerged in water, which is great. It's also much more customizable thanks to Moto Maker. Talking you around the key buttons and ports, volume rock and power button on the right hand side of both devices. Down at the base, micro USB connectors, left hand side, no buttons. Up at the top, 3.5mm headphone jack, so very similar configuration. Cameras around the back, you've got a 13 megapixel snapper on the Moto G and an 8 megapixel snapper on the Lumia 650, but in spite of that, in my time with it, I much prefer the Lumia 650's camera between the user interface, and the performance and noise handling is just better. Removable back covers across both, 2000 milliamps inside the batteries of the Lumia 650 as compared to 2450 on the Moto G. I'll come on to battery performance a little bit later, but now I'm going to jump onto what is inside the phones, and it's Windows 10 or Windows 10 for mobile versus Android, and it's Android currently Lollipop on here, not Marshmallow just yet. You can see it's a very stock version of Android, and Motorola's always been awesome for that. Android's definitely my preferred interface of the two, not necessarily just because of the interface, because the interface on Windows 10 is actually pretty beautiful in its own right. It's a clean aesthetic, etc., but it's just the app support. You'll see I install tons of applications on my phones. 16 gig of memory is plenty of room to install loads of games, etc. You'll be hard pressed to find 16 gigs worth of games that you actually want to install, or apps in general, on Windows 10. I'm going to get a lot of hate for that in the comments. And there are some great third-party applications, but it just isn't competitive, which is a shame. So that's going to be a big deciding factor as to which one of these devices is for you. Another deciding factor may well be processors and performance in general. I didn't find there was too much lag with the Lumia 650, but on paper it's pretty paltry in terms of its power. You've got 1 gig of RAM paired with a Snapdragon 212 processor, and that's when in comparison to a 410 processor, which is more powerful in itself, but also with 2 gig of RAM, like I said earlier. That's both these devices, through user interface, office functionality, and key kind of messaging, phone calls, etc., didn't throw any issues my way. What's also great is the fact that the Lumia 650's camera is stupendous, and didn't, again, take too long to fire up, take too long to make manual edits too. It's not as snappy as some of the higher enders out there, but with things like manual focus, you can get some pretty sensational shots and control a lot more of the image quality than you would be able to with other devices on the scene. So jumping out of that, both of these devices take good pictures generally speaking, and record video up to 720p. What's really great is the fact that Microsoft has improved the video recording capabilities on the Lumia 650 to now support touch to focus mid capture, which is great. You can also see you've got a degree of control over things like focus, etc. in video. Video performance across both is good, but like you can see, there's no tap to focus mid capture on the Moto G 3rd generation, and that bugs me like crazy. Unfortunately, photos have stopped. So imaging, generally the Lumia 650 wins out. For gaming, generally the Moto G definitely wins out, especially when you consider things like Final Fantasy. I've just reviewed Final Fantasy 9. We're still on Final Fantasy 3 for the Microsoft Lumia 650 and all Microsoft devices. As far as connections goes, they're actually really comparable. You've got LTE, you've got expandability by micro SD card, 16 gig onboard memory. You also have NFC on the Lumia 650, no NFC on the Moto G. Neither of these devices has wireless charging either. As far as the batteries go, it's 2000 milliamps versus 2450 milliamps or thereabouts, like I said earlier, and interestingly they both last a similar amount of time. A lot of that comes down to the fact that with Windows phones we just generally have different usage habits. Without that many applications, that many games, we just don't switch it on as much, don't use them as much, and so yeah, about a day from both quite comfortably, which is good going. If you do have a lot of screen on time on the Lumia 650, then that will drop lower than the Moto G though, so bear that in mind if you watch a lot of videos, etc. Generally speaking, two really good devices. The Moto G just got a whole lot better now that it isn't the £200+ price that it launched at. As for the Lumia 650, it's launched at a very competitive price, and the only way is down. £160 now. You're not going to get anything that looks this premium and has as good a screen. Shame about the power under the hood, but if that doesn't irk you too much, you'll get a great camera on this thing. Hopefully you enjoyed this comparison. If you did, click that thumbs up button. If you like BTech in general, like I say all the time, subscribe. It helps us out like crazy. Thanks for watching.